Does the Tennessee legislature have a race problem? Well, tonight, as lawmakers prepare to return for a special session, our Revealed investigation takes an in-depth look at that important question.
This follows a legislative session earlier this year that saw the expulsion of 2 young Black House members for their gun protest on the House floor. News Channel 5 Chief Investigative Reporter Phil Williams went back to watch hours and hours of debate from that session. Phil, what did you find?
Well, you know, in my 30-plus years covering the legislature, the racial divisions sometimes seem more intense than in any point I've ever witnessed, especially in the House. It's so bad that what should have been a simple resolution to honor an elderly civil rights leader sparked controversy as the white Republicans in power insisted it had to be amended. If there's one thing that Tennessee lawmakers can usually agree on, it's the resolutions honoring the accomplishments of noteworthy Tennesseans. Here it was the heroes of Nashville's Waffle House shooting.
Whereas we're pleased to honor and commend those extraordinary athletic teams.
And here it was the Vanderbilt baseball program. But it would be a different story.
There's a resolution to honor and commend Dr. Charles Kimbrough for his outstanding community leadership.
When Nashville Democrat Justin Jones attempted to honor the legacy of 95-year-old civil rights activist Dr. Charles Kimbrough, Republicans didn't like what they thought they read in Jones's resolution, the line praising Tennesseans who were willing, past tense, to sacrifice their personal safety to fight for oppressed groups across the nation.
And my friend Representative Faison said it was because some members don't believe that there is such a thing as oppressed people.
There are plenty of us in Tennessee who don't believe anybody's oppressed in America anymore.
GOP caucus chair Jeremy Faison admits some of his members had a problem with that line, so he brought an amendment to strip out any mention of oppression.
I don't see it as someone was saying that they were oppressed as much as they saw a resolution someone is oppressed today.
But that's not what it says.
No, and like I said, I don't think that people actually read the whole resolution. They just saw the beginning.
I thought their argument was good, and so I supported that.
House Majority Leader William Lamberth also went along with it. But you've had the Bull Connors of the world who turned dogs and fire hoses loose on black protesters. You've had the Freedom Riders who were beaten up. You've had little girls killed in church bombings. You've had civil rights workers killed for pushing voting rights. Why is it so controversial to say that black people were oppressed?
I don't think that's controversial at all. It is a horrible part of our history.
But it was stripped out of this resolution.
Well, again, the more modern tense word of that, I would hope in the last 50 years we've made some sort of progress in this nation.
On the House floor, Jones shared Dr. Kimbrough's story.
When he was president of the Nashville branch from 1973 to 1980, they burned a cross outside the Nashville branch of the NAACP right here in this city.
And as he's speaking about the resolution, I realized that this was to honor a man who truly is a hero, is a civil rights hero, and truly had fought for oppressed people. And that we had made a mistake by pulling that out.
Jeremy Faison says he wanted to make it right, and he told Jones the House would reconsider the resolution honoring Dr. Kimbrough the next week and pass it as originally drafted. But then,
where people like me couldn't even sit at a table like this, how would you teach that under this law that is against divisive concepts when we lived in a divided America that many of you still want us to live in?
Okay, Chairman Reagan.
Jones ticked off Republicans in committee by challenging their bill cracking down on college professors teaching so-called divisive concepts like race. So Faison decided not to try to fix their mistake on Jones's resolution.
The will of the legislature, or the will of my members, like, why do we want to help this guy again? I mean, he's done nothing but just get caught out of order and throwing punches constantly.
You know, there is a level of fragility, especially coming from some of our white male counterparts.
Representative Antonio Parkinson is past chair of the legislature's Black Caucus. Does the Tennessee General Assembly have a race problem?
Oh, absolutely. There is a race problem, but it doesn't mean that everyone is intentionally racist. But there's a race problem.
But you don't have the right to harass somebody. You don't have the right to belittle somebody.
This year, no one had a problem when a white Democrat argued that a GOP pronoun bill would give teachers a license to bully trans students. But when Justin Jones made the exact same argument,
Is this the legacy of this body? Is this what we're doing on the last day of session? Passing laws to bully children?
Republican Monty Fritz demanded that he be silenced.
I object under Section 123 of Mason's Rules of Order. The member has impugned the motives of this bill, suggesting that it is to bully students.
Which led to this exchange.
Yeah, you can object all you want, but there's a difference between black folk and white folk here.
Hang on, there's objection. There's objection. Leader Lambert, did you object to something?
I am objecting to being off the bill and indicating that folks are being treated differently on this floor based on their ethnicity. That is a serious allegation.
It irritates the shit out of the members when you call them on racist. I mean, you would think you set somebody's grandmother on fire, man, because it just it makes their blood boil.
It's the same Republican supermajority that's passed laws saying teachers cannot take sides about hot-button issues, including slavery.
To ensure that when it's presented in all facets, both for and against.
It's kind of hard to be for or against slavery. You either got to be against it or against it, I think.
In a debate over capital punishment,
could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also.
Republican Paul Sherrill suggested bringing back lynching.
And I think the notion of pushing that you're oppressed because you're a minority is doing us no good.
Do you think that we are past the point of racism existing?
Oh, racism will be here. Bigotry. The term racism I think is a weird term. It's hard to define racism. Bigotry is prevalent in every culture.
Are you aware that students of color are disproportionately suspended and expelled from Tennessee schools? Are you aware of this fact?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm probably not aware of any of the facts that you're going to bring to me, no.
This year, Republican Jason Zachary passed a bill to allow teachers to opt out of training that helps them recognize their own biases, so-called implicit bias training, if it makes them uncomfortable.
Typically, what I have seen in America when it comes to implicit bias training, it's more geared on one side is the issue, instead of we as humans have an issue of the heart.
But the legislation was not that specific. It just said teachers can opt out of implicit bias training.
Because typically we see the curriculum has always been very biased.
And the notion of implicit bias is that everyone has some sort of bias.
Absolutely. Yeah, everyone does.
You have biases, I have biases.
Absolutely. I have my own biases, right? And I've had some unlearning that I've had to do myself.
But with the Tennessee legislature now deeply divided on racial issues, Parkinson says lawmakers themselves need to take time to understand their own biases and each other's truths.
It may not be comfortable, and that's okay. It may not be comfortable for me, and that's okay. But once we understand those truths, I think that we can start to begin to have better conversations, more conversations leading to more solutions.
Yeah, Representative Parkinson also had a resolution dealing with the role of racism in the medical treatment received by African Americans. It's a problem that's been well documented by the medical community. That resolution was killed in committee. So was a bill to require police officers to receive annual diversity training. Even a bill backed by Governor Lee to make Juneteenth an official state holiday to celebrate the end of slavery. That bill passed, but 28 white Republicans voted against it.
Phil, at the end of your piece, Representative Parkinson really makes a plea for people just to sit down and try to understand each other's perspective. Any hope of that happening?
It certainly sounds like a good place to start, but frankly, the people who would need to be involved in that conversation, right now, there's no signs that they recognize that there's a need for it.
Wow. That there's even a problem, right?
That there's a problem.
Be the architects of their own destruction. Start Star Boy, he just said it. And you shouldn't have used your ring.
Why?
When lambs is lost in the mountain, they cry. Sometimes come the mother, sometimes the wolf.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.